And the Lake Superior weather report shows that it is mostly not frozen over. I think this year actually is like a record year for the lack of ice coverage on the lake. Sometimes it freezes all the way over. Right out here is the bay, but farther out is actually Lake Superior on the tip of it. And yeah, it doesn't have much ice coverage. Anyways, so this summer, Cody and I are going to take his Cutlass on Autocross Week, which is super, super cool. It's a drag and drive type event, but for autocrossing. And for me, that is a ton of fun to be had. Cody's been wanting to do this for a couple years, and he got onto the list and signed up, and we're all paid up, and we're gonna go do it. So that comes up in a few months, but right now he is really thrashing on his Cutlass right now, trying to get it ready before the Motorhead Madness car show in Duluth. It's about a month away at the time of filming, and it's going to Stat Raps in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, who is actually a track sponsor. It's a good meeting of two worlds. So they're going to do a partial wrap on his car, I believe. I don't think we're going to show you any sneak peek or anything like that, but it's going to look pretty sweet, I bet, when it's all done, and hopefully I'll get a sneak peek at it when I'm there. I don't know if he's going to show it or not. I got a quick drive over to a couple harbors, Minnesota, and I'll catch up with you guys when we get over to Cody's house. The front clip is off right now because the car is in the process of Cody's doing all the body work to it, and it's going to get wrapped. So he's working on it in time for Motorhead Madness, which is at the Amsoil Arena at the deck in about a month. I think it's mid-March.
Yeah,
something like that.
See, I've already finished the metal work. I had to replace a section down in here, and this rocker section was replaced. And we're patching some holes, and then this up here is from me pulling the fender out to clear the rear end because I went wider to widen out the track width. So this is just needs to be sanded and smoothed down yet. And this whole back section here got replaced. And
yeah, you've been going to town on it. Like,
this is a lot of what came off the car.
Oh my god. It's funny, you were posting pictures of it and stuff, and it's like the deeper you went, the more sins of the past were like getting uncovered, you know, because it needed some work, but then you found out it seemed like there's a lot going on.
Well, you can see what we got: bare metal, original primer, the first blue paint, then whatever bodywork primer they redid, looks like 2 layers, and then the final paint that was last done. But then I started grinding on the doors to check the bottom of the doors because I had to take like this textured anti-rock chip thing surface off because nothing will stick to it sticker-wise. And there's brown original paint on the doors, so both doors have been replaced at some point.
So it got 2 brown. Was this the original color to the car?
Yeah, because it's the same blue at the back, but the original door color was brown.
Yeah, so it's had doors, there's a hint of brown on it, and it'll remain under the paint, but it's going to be wrapped. So it's going to be totally different, you know, probably next time you guys see it. It's going to look really cool. But yeah, he's getting his livery put together because we are doing Autocross Week coming up this summer. What were the dates on that again? Dates and places and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, actually, we're doing a little more than just Autocross Week because we're doing like a week and a half, almost 2 weeks of events.
Yeah, it's like a super week almost.
Yeah,
you know.
It's gonna be kind of our own little one lap of America almost.
Yeah. So I hadn't really heard of Autocross Week, and everyone can think of drag and drive stuff like Power Tour and Hot Rods Drag Week, and there's Sick Week, of course. But evidently, this is only the second year they've done Autocross Week. And I think a lot of the cars, especially like the Cutlass and the people that are driving them, it shows how durable the vehicles really are if they can be self-sufficient and kind of do the whole thing by themselves. Because that's a lot of wheeling in one of these things, especially like the latter half. And where exactly do we pick up in the car and then it's self-sufficient? You know?
So how we're going to start out the week is they're going to be kicking off the very first weekend in June with GreenLife Midwest Fest.
Yeah.
So we'll be down there. I'm going to run time attack for the weekend there. Sunday, we'll load back up, and then we drive to Pittsburgh to start Autocross Week, which kicks off on Monday for, I think, just registration. Then the competition starts on Tuesday. So then we'll be in Pittsburgh Tuesday racing. Then we're in the car for the rest of the week. We'll be going to UMI Motorsports Park, and then to US Dragway 41.
Yep.
And then back to Pittsburgh, a pit race there to finish out the week on Friday. And then, as long as everything's gone well, that should be, I'm guessing it's going to be 800 to 1,000 miles in street miles in the car, plus autocross for those. And then Friday night, after we're done there, we're going to try to hightail it back to Brainerd, Minnesota to run TTS, which is the triple track shootout. So it'd be drag racing and autocross on Saturday, all scored together with a standing start shootout on Sunday afternoon.
That triple track is a cool event because, like you said, it's different disciplines basically to show that a car is not really a one-trick pony. It's not part of Autocross Week, but it's a really good event, and that's Proving Grounds 1.0?
Yep.
Yeah, so Proving Grounds 1.0. I was at 2.0 last year with a friend. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, so that's pretty much the week. It's going to be a lot of driving, that's for sure. So if the car does it and everything goes good, that's awesome. That really shows it's a solid ride. If any vehicle can do it, it's impressive. So that's a lot of driving. It's like if you did any 2 of those, like from here in the Midwest where we live, the upper Midwest, that'd be like a pretty good destination for a summer, you know, for an enthusiast. But to go do like 4 or 5 driving events, that's like a lot to cram into 2 weeks too. That's a lot of driving.
And the different disciplines, because
Yeah,
they're
it's
going
no
to be, you know, we'll be autocrossing twice, we'll be drag racing once, and then I'm doing time attack basically twice.
Yep.
You know, so it's, it's being able to set the car up and have the adjustability to do all, 3 types of events?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
4 if we're going to count all the street driving too.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, to road trip alone, it's like power tour kind of, you know, it's kind of the point of it, or whatever it might be. But yeah, it's all, you know, this has been worked on from front to back, so it's going to be a pretty wild car to be taken on a trip like that. It's not like hopping in the C4 or something, which would be like, you know, it might die, but, you know, it's not like a bone stock car by any stretch of the imagination, so it's going to be interesting.
The easy button would be something that's been built in the last 10 years.
Well, exactly. If you hopped in like a new Corvette or Mustang, anything new, like you do it.
You don't have to worry
it'd be
about
fine.
It kind of
but this will be interesting, and that's why I'm interested in going. Like, I remember he posted on Facebook about doing it. I'm like, hi, because it seemed really fun. So now we're gonna do it.
The best part was you were the first idiot I figured would actually go to.
Well, no, and it worked out really well. So I got the camera stuff. You've got the car. I think it should make for some interesting video documentation of it. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. We're a few months away right now, but this is the state the car's in today. It's like late February. Yeah. So there's a few months, but it's going off to get wrapped in the next week.
Yeah, getting wrapped next week. And 3 weeks from now, it's going to be at the show, and because I'm not about being, you know, pretending a car is done, it will drive itself in and out of the show.
Yep, I'm sure it will.
And then we'll probably rip it back apart and keep modifying on some other stuff, too.
Well,
but the big thing is trying to, knock out bodywork now and fixing things. Like, I didn't even realize how bad the trunk was until I wanted to put a full-size spare tire in here. So I made this opening so we can get a full-size spare standing up back here, and then I still need to build a bracket to like store the jack and that kind of stuff. But at which point I knew the last couple of years the body's been getting torn open, and I had to make patches for that. But what I didn't realize was the gas tank's mounted to the bottom of the trunk. And when I started taking it apart, I was able to push the floor up and down that the gas tank mounts to by about 3 inches.
And if you want to see that, that's all been documented on his YouTube channel as well, so there's a link for that. I didn't get to see him fit in the spare tire well and beat it open with the mallet and everything to get the full-size spare to fit. But yeah, it was crazy. The video of it, it's a big old cut, you know, all through here where it was tearing. You could literally just shake the floor where the gas tank was mounted. It was really kind of wild. You know?
It was. Like, I mean, I didn't realize it. I thought, because
pretty sketchy.
There was a little bit of like tears and stuff, and I knew there was a lot of body flex from the first year that I was tracking this. When I came home from Road America, and half the body mounts were torn either out of the body or out of the frame.
Yeah.
Then I put the roll cage in, and surprisingly enough, all of a sudden these tears started separating at the wheel wells the next year, and I'm like, well, that's weird. I just figured the body was still moving around, and then it wasn't until finding out how bad it was that I realized, like, oh yeah, there's 100+ pounds of gasoline hanging from this floor that's shifting around back and forth and bouncing.
Well, it makes perfect. It was never designed at all with that in mind, I'm sure. Especially for how much you've done it. It's like, there's no way, you know. But yeah, this turned out really good.
The construction of these cars compared to even, you know, a 15, 20-year-old unibody car is just not there compared to what the newer stuff is as far as chassis rigidity.
Yep. Well, you were talking about keeping in the last, probably was the last video I've been watching them. You were talking about keeping dust out of here too, which is actually a pretty big deal when you're going to be transporting a bunch in the back. I mean, you don't want it to be a dust bowl and everything's greasy and dirty.
It is back here, and I vacuumed this out already.
Well, it's a good point.
You know, and we're going to have all our stuff back here for Autocross week and trying to go back and forth. The last thing we wanted to be doing is pulling all our stuff out and having it be covered in dust, or if it rains, be just full of water and everything else.
No, you don't want any of that action, but be the home for the 9-inch when it's all in there. Did you back half this, or do you open the wheel arches, or what's this?
All that got done crazy back here was I did this frame notch.
Yep, you notched it.
It's basically like a mini tub. However, I don't actually need this space. It was just for some additional clearance on the old setup.
Okay.
Now the tire with the wider rear end is moved out even more. So really, if I wanted to go to like a 12-inch wide wheel, I would have the room for it.
Yep.
But the class I run with GreenLife is street mod, and we're limited to do a 285.
So if you haven't yet, check out Cody's Instagram. It's under Asphalt Gundam. There'll be a link right here, whatever, with his name on it in the description. But I was listening to, I was reading about what he was saying about this solid axle rear end that's going in the back of the Cutlass. And he was saying that there's camber built into each end of the axle. And my brain could not compute it, and I haven't had a chance to ask him about it, and I didn't do any reading, so he's going to explain it a little bit, but there's actually camber built into this, and it's something I've never heard of. I thought it was really interesting, so that's going to be a good thing to actually probably show you guys. Probably a lot of you haven't seen it either.
Yeah, it's a 9-inch rear end, and it's a floater housing, and the floater means that the axle doesn't have a flange on it. And what that is a nice upgrade, because now we have dual bearings out here on the hub, and they're pretty far apart. So it gives a lot more stability to the wheel out there, and if you snap an axle, you're not going to lose a wheel.
Well, so like I can relate that to F-body stuff. You break a C-clip, your axle can ejecto, and you can lose your wheel and tire and everything.
That happened. First time I went to a drag strip with not this car, but my other one or whatever. That's exactly what happened. Was the axle and the wheel made it farther down the drag strip than I did.
That's not what you want. Yeah, like you probably know, it can really tear up your car too. And that if it leaves, it might not be real clean when it leaves. So that's a really good upgrade, especially when somebody driving fast. I would think. You don't want your axle exiting on a high-speed corner or something. There's a lot of side load on a C-clip or however it happens. I guess I don't know what would cause it.
It's also a good benefit for is for like me doing the road racing stuff. Is now your brake caliper or brake rotor is not able to move back and forth with that play in a C-clip.
Oh.
So now it's locked in place, and you're not going to get pad knockback.
What's pad knockback?
So pad knockback is when you're spinning as you're going down the road, and if it's wobbling, it's going to push the pads away from it. Oh. So then the next time you go to step on the brakes, you're going to have a real soft pedal. For the first pump.
Right. So like the axle shafts inside of either one of my cars, right, or the Trans Am right now, it has a flange on it like you'd see here, but it's part of the axle, and that would cause the rotor to move.
Yeah,
correct?
Because there's that little bit of clearance down in the center diff area.
Okay.
And I had a clutch type in the stock rear end that was on this car, and as I started tracking it, and over the course of a year, it wore the clutches enough there that I went from like maybe a few thousandths play, which is new and it's not bad, to it was moving around about an 1/8 inch on the axles.
Huh. That's something I wouldn't have thought of, honestly. But it makes sense. So you can have the axle slotting a little bit inside of the axle. That's the whole idea. So it's a floater.
That's the floater, yep.
I could have never told someone what a floater means, but I've heard it forever. So that actually
it just goes in like this.
Explained it to me.
So it just slides in.
Oh, there it is.
And then it engages in the splines out here, and it'll engage in the splines in the center.
Well, you just put that together for me, if anybody. So that's good. Now I know that. And now it's
what makes it work with the camber is if you get a close-up on here, there's kind of a barrel shape to the end of those splines.
There certainly
is. And that takes up that little bit of a difference in angle.
So how is it built in that the end of the axle tube is actually angled a little bit as it's fixed to it?
You can see the end is welded on here, and it's just milled at a 1 degree angle make that 1 degree change.
So it's very slight, but it is there.
Yeah, and it will make a difference because my tires always end up wearing where they kind of like self-camber, because they'll wear the outside edges a lot more than the inside edges on the rear.
Okay.
Just from normal suspension movement, the way it moves around.
What level would you put this rear end at? Like people that are enthusiasts or a grassroots level, this would be like a higher end rear end to have in a vehicle, I would say.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, I've gotten by. The rear end I took out was a standard 4.9" with the flanges on the end.
Yep.
And that one's got the bearing solid mounted to the shaft by the flange, which is better than a C-clip also because it doesn't let it move around as much.
Yep.
But then you still have from that bearing, the radius out to that flange is still a lot of leverage on there that disappears with something like this.
I suppose you get camber from this too, but is it more of a safety or a performance improvement, or is it both?
It is probably more about safety improvement than what
that
you
makes
see from
sense
the camber,
now that
but
you're
the
saying
camber
it.
is worth something.
Yeah, so you'll gain a little bit, big safety improvement, really. So that's interesting.
This engine probably makes around 400 to 420 horsepower, and the new one with its aluminum heads, bigger intake, roller cam, and dry sump setup there, we made 520 with that one.
Yep. Yeah, that's a big difference.
And it was we could rev it out to about 7,000 RPM versus this one's pretty much all done making power at like 56, 58.
Well, dry sump's a big improvement too for what you're doing. Huge, right? Because this is still wet. You know,
because even with the 3-quart AccuSump and 6 quarts in the pan here, it'll shove all 9 quarts into the engine, and I'll still have an oil pressure drop and turn to a Brainerd at 125.
Well, so what's an AccuSump for people that don't know? So a lot of guys haven't seen this probably, but people that drift and road race or hard autocrosser cars do it. So this is an AccuSump. A lot of guys that drift have one, but road racing too. This is probably really where it came from, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, but all it is just an air cylinder basically. So you have the oil come in from the engine when it has pressure, and there's a piston in here, so it'll fill with oil, and it builds the air pressure up on this side. You usually leave about I think it was 10 pounds of air pressure in there, so that if the oil pressure drops in the engine, that air pressure is higher, and then we'll push the oil back into the engine to keep it supplied with oil pressure. Yep, it's great insurance because it gives you not only its extra capacity, but if you do lose oil pressure on a hard corner where you start starving the engine, it's going to backfeed that high pressure oil back in your engine. It's a good safety device for your engine, basically. Yeah, and I had to put that on last year because after doing the suspension upgrades and putting sticky tires on for the first time there, went to Brainerd, went to GingerMan for GridLife, and my outlap going into turn 9, I lost oil pressure because it was cornering that much harder. Scavenge pump? Yep. Okay, so this is the pump that'll actually reclaim the oil from the bottom of the engine, right? Put it back into the oil. Puts it back into the tank, and then the tank is just a reservoir, and then we can put 10 to 12 quarts in the tank depending on size. I had a black C6Z06. They're a factory dry sump car, as is a Grand Sport, I believe. They're an LS3, but that's a big reason they do it, but it's also shown to pick up quite a bit of power because you don't have oil slosh around the crankcase. You pick up a lot of power. Yeah, I call it cavitation. Cavitation? Yeah, it's just the oil mist that's in the crankcase actually makes drag on the crankshaft. The connecting rods and everything that's rotating in there. Well, you wouldn't think it would pick up a lot of power too, but apparently it could be a lot in some cases. It really can be a lot. Actually, the other thing it's doing is because it's actively pulling a vacuum in the crankcase, it helps piston ring seal. And I have seen with just a vacuum pump in a wet sump still, even just a vacuum pump on a 500 horsepower engine will pick up 30 horsepower. Yep. I've heard people doing that at the drag race specifically. They'll do that type of thing, I guess. Yeah, but I mean, I've seen it pick up 30 on a small block Mopar. I've seen it pick up 30 on a small block Ford. I've seen it pick up 30 on small block Chevy, LS. You worked at an engine machine shop for a while. You did dyno and everything. Oh, yeah. All that. Yeah, so this is an informed opinion. It's not, I read it on a forum. This is something that he's firsthand. These are tests that I saw back to back on a dyno with the vacuum pump versus the vacuum pump. Yep. So interesting. Will be maybe powered by this, but that's the idea. Still a 5-speed transmission behind it. I'm in the process. I'll be rebuilding that and then doing some modifications to try to add a manual pump to it so that we can cycle some fluid through a cooler.
Oh, okay.
Because otherwise it gets real hot.
Yep.
So I have this $75 eBay rear end pump
Okay.
that I'm going to try to see if I can figure out a way to drive the gear off of probably the secondary shaft in the transmission, so it'll run a constant speed when the car is in gear, and then all I got to do is supply it to oil, and then I can have an external output, run it through a cooler, and then back into the trans.
So that's going to be probably in the transmission.
Yeah,
it'll fit in there.
I think I got room. I can bolt it to the back of the case.
Okay.
And make it work, but haven't gotten that far yet.
Well, there you go. It's going to be more DIY stuff. That's the whole project here. It's all been DIY. It's really cool when you see it. Well, that's it for today's video. I hope you liked all the tech talk with Cody and going over what we're going to do for Autocross week. It's going to be a pretty awesome adventure to go on for sure. It's going to be, like I said earlier, a lot like all the drag and drive events we all know of, where you're kind of self-contained and you're hauling your car around racing from track to track and putting on a lot of highway miles. So it's going to be interesting. Sorry for the bad audio. I think my microphone on the camera finally died and it took a lot of editing, so it might sound a little tinny or funny at certain points, but that's all we got for today's video. Go check out Cody's social media stuff at Asphalt Gundam on Instagram and his YouTube channel, Cody Smith Motorsports. Definitely check out his sponsors. I've used Hawk brake pads before. Viking Performance is local to Minnesota, and QuickTrick Performance has been great to him. So thanks for those guys for helping local grassroots motorsports out, and we'll see you guys in the next video.